Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to tune into Mars and Gemini. Mars entered Gemini recently and will spend the next 7 months in Gemini. This is what happens when Mars goes retrograde and stays within a sign during that retrograde. So it's worth giving some attention to just the nature of this transit. We'll start by looking at just some of the movements of Mars when it stations retrograde, when it enters its shadow, etc. But before we do, quick reminder, the chart interpretation course has begun. You have just a few more days. We've already begun. This is the first week of Q&A, but enrollment's open for a few more days, so you are still welcome to join if you are already trained in the basics of evolutionary astrology. If not, you can check out the Essentials course, which is available as a self-study program, and also a live training program that begins next year. Check all of that in the description below. So let's take a look at some of the upcoming Mars cycles, just to give us a sense of how this is moving. I put Mars on the ascendant. And let's move Mars forward week by week. At September 4th or 5th or so, Mars at 8 degrees Gemini will actually enter its shadow. So that's the degree that Mars will return to at the end of its retrograde. Here, Mars goes retrograde at the very end of October at 25 degrees. It's going to be interesting. I mean, it's squaring Neptune and Jupiter, which just regresses back into Pisces. And it's also in conjunct to Pluto. So this is a very powerful time. I'll look forward to talking more about that then. All right, then Mars does its retrograde journey and stations at 8 degrees in January. And then Mars finally leaves Gemini late March. Interestingly, just as Pluto also enters Aquarius. So you can say Mars in Gemini is like the final run of Pluto in Capricorn. Let's tune into just the essence of Mars in Gemini. As always, I speak to Mars as corresponding to the leading edge of our evolutionary growth. It's where there's instigation of energy, right? We're faced with life experience and we're making choices. These choices open up the playing field of life experience. It leads us down a path. At the core with Mars, there are kind of just two ways of orienting to life experience. Choosing and responding from more of a reactive place. And that reactive place is more of a gross level of consciousness where we're not really thinking about long-term consequence. It's more about immediate gratification and just sort of reacting to that immediate stimulus, very much fight, flight response, moving towards a more basic level of needing to make sure that we have the freedom that we need to live. And then a deeper level of movement with Mars has a thoughtfulness to it. It's trained, it's cultivated, it's refined. And action comes with consideration to a deeper reflection on why am I acting? What's my purpose? What am I trying to do? So what happens with Mars, we're always training, we're refining our instinctual impulses to be moving towards higher purpose, higher meaning. We do develop a lot of intelligence with Mars. The thing that I always say with Mars is you need to do something with that energy. Right, so if we're not reacting unconsciously and just instinctively and self-gratifyingly in the moment, what are we going to do with those strong impulses that are present for us? It needs to go somewhere. So fundamentally, Mars is going to bring us to face a lot and lots of stimulation, and it's just through learning, right? We're going to do something and we'll realize that wasn't the best response. That brings wisdom and awareness and knowledge, which allows us to use this energy in more wise ways later on. We can really say that our intelligence, our self-awareness, our self-realization, right? The degree of our self-knowledge is the leader that's guiding and directing this Mars energy, this movement. So Mars in Gemini is a fun one. Gemini corresponds to thought, to logic, to how we are linearly organizing reality, and we're doing that all the time. We need to be able to take in information and add the information to existing thought forms to then build upon a more holistic understanding of reality. That's what we're doing when we're reading a book. We're gathering new information, but we're adding that information to an existing context. That's what you're doing right now by listening to me. When you have a conversation with someone, if there's a state of openness and listening and receptivity to learning, then it's likely that both individuals will come out of that conversation having learned something new, thus thoughts they've never thought, thus seeing reality in a way that is completely new. We're constantly expanding our understanding of life, seeing more of the interconnectedness between all things with Gemini. But what's absolutely necessary in order to do that is a state of openness and receptivity to learning. So the issue with Mars and Gemini, if you think about instinctiveness and just immediate gratification, is jumping from one thought to the next. It's very easy to form logical conclusions and to not necessarily take the time to think about the conclusions that are being made, right? You hear something outside, a screeching sound, you make the conclusion, oh, that's a car. Now it makes sense, that's a car screeching on the road, but it isn't necessarily so. We can make really quick conclusions based upon the data that we're collecting. And by the way, all data happens through the senses, right? We're taking in stimulation through the senses, ears, the eyes, whatever, the hands, and then the mind is classifying it. So consciousness itself is giving it context, right? Our state of awareness is putting the sensual experience and categorizing it in different ways. So you're hearing a screeching sound outside and the mind says, that was a car. Likely it was, but there's always the possibility that our logical conclusions are if there's more information, if there's more data. And the issue with Mars in Gemini is we can make really quick and hasty conclusions based on incomplete data. The conclusions that we make can provide a sense of security. So we know in Gemini, there's a sense of, I need to feel secure. So I'm making these conclusions so I can feel secure about myself and life. What do we need that for? In order to adapt to life circumstance, to get along, to survive. If you're driving in a car, you need to feel like you're able to read the signs, read the map, interact with the environment in such a way that you can get to where you're going. If you're walking through life and you're talking to people about different things, you need to feel secure that you're able to hear what they're saying and understand it, and to communicate as well, share information, ask questions. To be in a state where we don't understand what's going on around us from a Gemini point of view can elicit a sense of insecurity. We thus can't really participate in life. With Mars and Gemini, though, we can be hasty in our conclusions and even become defensive. No, this is it. I know this. I saw this. I smelt it. I heard it. And my mind decided and concluded this is what it is. But have we taken the time to consider that there might be more information? And this can become an issue if you're in a conversation with someone. And by the way, this is not just in a conversation with someone. This can be a conversation with yourself. What I'm about to express applies whether it's with a person or with your own self. You can hear a thought and immediately jump to the conclusion. Perhaps that thought wasn't completed, right? Perhaps there was more that wanted to be shared. This can become incredibly emotionally volatile if it's like an intimate conversation, right? Or if you're studying and you're learning something, you just might need to listen more and allow your senses, in this case, auditory senses, to take in more information before concluding what you think this is all about. Same thing if you're thinking about something by yourself. You could have a thought and then interrupt that thought with another thought, and actually walk this trail of associated thinking, where one thought leads to another thought, and we're not really forming significantly meaningful, holistic, and intelligent conclusions about reality. We end up scattering ourselves in all kinds of directions. And then we walk around not so much with an intelligence and informed awareness of life, more with a hasty, reckless, anxious, scattered way of thinking. But that becomes its own logic. Like everything that we think, whether we're seeing the thought through entirely or not, becomes some kind of formulation of reality. And the mind's going to want to make it make sense, even if it makes no sense. That's the thing about logic. Anything can be logical. You can make any, why am I wearing a teal blanket? Oh, obviously I'm wearing a teal blanket because Ari Moshe has Venus in Libra and his curtains are teal. And he wants to wear teal to match because that's what Venus in Libra is all about. And also we know that Venus in Libra corresponds to your Venus in general corresponds to your aesthetics. Ari's talked about that in the past during a Venus video. So it's very empirical that he's wearing a teal blanket to match the teal. If he had Venus in Aries, he would actually not want to match at all. He would be much more reckless around what he's wearing and the color scheme. That was totally logical, but totally insane too. You can be logical and insane at the same time. Keep your eye on that when Mars is squaring Neptune and stationing. It's like the need to kind of make sense out of things that actually have no meaning, really from an ultimate perspective. And this is a big part of my own ongoing reflection in life. We're constantly looking out at life and trying to decide what things are. Very often what we're deciding things are just ways of crystallizing our fearful thoughts or our separating thoughts about reality. Ways of saying what I've decided is true, and here's logically why that is so. What can happen with Mars and Gemini is, since anything can be logical, it's easy to walk through life without really questioning our own thoughts. And sometimes we might create the illusion of seeking to learn, seeking to understand more, but very often the questions that we're asking aren't honest questions. Very, very often the questions that we're asking are actually subconscious ways of keeping ourselves within our existing assumption, being questions that elicit answers that validate what we've already decided to be true. A question that leads towards learning, right? There's a certain kind of question that will result in learning something new. It's like the lock that opens the door. That kind of question comes from a sincere recognition of, I don't know. A sincere receptivity to learn. And then that Mars energy, that Mars that's ready to act, right? It's humble, it's quiet. It's like standing, the analogy of the battlefield. It's standing there, it's not going to act. It's taking a moment to consider, what is the best way? It's taking in all the information. And to be very open to learning means that there is sort of this excitement even in finding the question. And again, how often do we live our lives where we're just moving through sort of certain assumptions and thought forms and conclusions about ourselves and other people and life situations? Are they true? Have we decided? And trauma can be involved in this, right? Certain stimulation can elicit certain conclusions that are conditioned in the mind. And then we react according to the conclusions that we've made. But are we just being hasty? So to actually take some time and notice the stimulation, to notice where the mind goes, but not be so quick to grab that with, and this is what it means, you know? One of the interesting things that can happen with Mars and Gemini is relative to the security and the need to just like go towards some sort of answer, go towards some sort of conclusion, there's an attachment to thought, right? Not necessarily a spaciousness and an openness to learning, but an attachment to staying in thought. Almost like if I can just keep on thinking, I'll arrive somewhere. But that attachment to thought actually just creates a lot of chaos and recklessness. Like, this is where accidents happen with Mars and Gemini, acting with impartial information, or confrontational situations, coming back to the conversation. If everything I say elicits a counter thought in you, and then you're jumping on that, or if you're just thinking by yourself and every thought you have elicits a counter thought and you're just moving with that, you're going to find yourself walking on an endless trail of associated thoughts that don't necessarily take you anywhere, but kind of sort of seem to take you everywhere, but really nowhere. We were speaking about this teal blanket. Teal, I wonder where the color teal came from. Like, who named it? Where does teal come from? There are some people named teal. Why are some people named colors? Anyone named purple? Why are people not named purple? I wonder, when did people start naming their children colors? What does a name mean? What does name, what's the etymology of the word name, etc., etc., etc.? I mean, I can go on forever. There are potentially infinite numbers of trails that the mind can go on with any number of thoughts. Like, give me 10 seconds from point A to point Z. You cannot predict the possibilities of where Z is and what Z is. Because anything in life, through some association of thought, connected to anything else in life, and it doesn't have any meaning. Doesn't necessarily teach you anything. So a lot of our thought is often just like that. I mean, we find that when we're sitting in meditation, you can catch yourself, wow, I was just thinking for a whole bunch, and that was totally meaningless. So cultivating agency, self-leadership over our thought. What am I thinking about? What's a useful way to think about it? What do I want to learn? What can really come through in terms of moving a lot of energy during this time is a greater, more refined awareness. Here are the things that I'm to study. Here are the things that I want to learn. Here are the questions that I have that open, our questions in a sense open up a field of research. And we can take this into a deeper spiritual level as well, asking these deeper questions about our own life, seeking to understand areas of self, areas of life experience that we haven't understood, that maybe we've been living with sort of an unresolved loop of thinking, wanting to go beyond that into some sort of learning. Like, to really understand the gift of learning is an actual state of being where we let something new in and it expands our understanding of life. We might find ourselves called to bring forward knowledge and information, to synthesize it, present it, whether it's creating a curriculum, teaching, sharing something, or researching or learning, starting some sort of new school or study. There is a great journey of learning and discovery and expansion of knowledge with this Mars in Gemini. So in future videos, I'm going to be coming back to tune into specific transits, likely as it enters its shadow, and definitely when Mars stations retrograde, which is a very, very interesting time, late October. Thank you for watching.